Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to episode number 3 of my 31 Days of Horror in October. In this video, I will be showing you everything I watched from October 13th through October 19th. Let's have a look. October 13th, 2019, I watched Without Warning. Without Warning is basically a story about a group of teens that are heading up into the mountains for a camping trip by the lake. Before they reach their destination, they make a stop and are warned by a local resident who's acting pretty strangely. He insists that they turn around and go back home. Of course, they ignore this warning and they carry on with their plans. Ultimately, they end up encountering a space alien who is hunting humans for either sport or food. So it has a very similar setup to Predator, where you have one alien that's hunting down humans. So this movie sort of has a Predator type setup, but with a slasher movie type vibe. And I thought it was really interesting. The same actor that played the Predator was the alien in this movie, so that's really cool. The weapon of choice for this alien is a disc that he throws, and when it hits its victims, tentacles sprout out and pierce into the flesh, latching on. Then suction cups begin to suck out the victim's blood. It's a pretty deadly weapon, but I have to say it looks pretty cheesy flying through the air. And overall, I thought this movie was pretty cheesy. And I can't necessarily say that it's a good movie, but man, I had a really good time watching it. I thought the alien in this movie looked pretty cool, and even though he's your pretty standard looking alien, I thought he still had a pretty menacing look when he was on screen, and I thought it was really cool that they didn't show him a lot from the beginning. You can kind of get a glimpse of him a couple of times, but they pretty much saved all the alien action for later on in the movie, and I thought that was a pretty good setup. But overall, I thought this movie was pretty cheesy, but I had a fun time watching it. October 14th, 2019, I watched American Fright Fest. American Fright Fest is a fun and entertaining slasher movie that's basically about a director who's definitely past his glory days. He's been in and out of rehab, and his directing days seem to be over. He's doing drugs throughout the movie, and he has a really bad alcohol problem. He treats anyone around him horribly, so he's basically a scumbag type character. But he does get a second chance when a local political figure, in an attempt to get re-elected, decides to put on a fright fest. He hires the director to produce and put on a fright fest. He figures that it will be a sure hit considering the director's past success with horror films. Of course, his careless and reckless lifestyle ends up leading into an accident to where two convicted murderers escape the wreckage. One of them might actually be innocent, but soon after they enter the attraction, then we are treated to some really violent kills. A lot of these kill sequences seem to be blink and you have missed it moments, so the movie is running at a very fast pace. So even though I have a few minor issues with this movie, I still find it to be a fun and entertaining slasher movie. October 15th, 2019, I watched Three from Hell. And this was one of my most anticipated releases for this month. And I know a lot of people still have not watched it yet, so I'm not really going to go into a whole lot of details with this one. Now, I do have to say that I had a really big smile on my face as I was watching this movie. I really enjoyed it. But with that being said, it wasn't necessarily the movie that I was wanting. I was kind of hoping they would touch on some of the more weird things from the House of a Thousand Corpses, such as the Dr. Satan angle. And this movie never does go there. There is one really good scene within the movie where Baby mentions her brother, Tiny, and it was a really good scene, and I enjoyed that scene within this movie. I do have to say that I feel like fans of The Devil's Rejects will probably enjoy this one more than the fans of A House of a Thousand Corpses. Of course, I'm just speculating here, but that's just kind of the vibe I was getting from this one. And even though there are plenty of horror movie elements throughout this movie, I felt like it was equally a shoot 'em up style movie as well. I thought it was really awesome that Clint Howard was in this movie. Even though it was a small part, his scene was still one of my favorite scenes in the entire film. And I have always felt like he was an underrated actor. So overall, I really did enjoy this movie, and I have always felt like Rob Zombie was at his best when he was getting to create his own fresh ideas. And I feel like anyone who is a fan of his movies will probably enjoy this movie as well. October 16, 2019, I watched The Resurrected. The Resurrected has a similar storyline to something like The Reanimator or even Frankenstein. So you have a scientist who's isolated himself from his wife and the rest of the outside world. He recently found a journal from the 17th century, and I believe it came from a relative, but he's obsessed with this journal, and he feels like he has found the way to create eternal life. So basically he has this serum that he can pour over any kind of remains and bring that person back to life. Even ashes, he can bring the person back to life. Overall, I thought this movie was a pretty slow burn, and I wasn't really all that interested in the characters. The movie did pick up for me in about the last 35 minutes. We do get to see some pretty cool reanimated dead things. The special effects on these creatures definitely remind me of something from Evil Dead 2 or maybe even Army of Darkness. That's definitely a good comparison. Probably not as good as the special effects in those films, but it's definitely a good comparison. So overall, I just felt this movie was average. It was a slow burn for me, and I thought the payoff at the end was pretty decent, but overall, I just thought the movie was okay. October 17th, 2019, I watched Critters 3. And this was a first time watch for me. For some reason, I have always overlooked Critters 3 and Critters 4. I was always a big fan of the first two films, but never bothered with 3 and 4. And within the past year, they had announced a new Critters TV show and a new Critters Attacks movies. I was really excited for the announcement of both, but I was let down by both. So I decided to go back and check out Critters 3. And I was not disappointed because I really enjoyed this movie, but I am a sucker for movies that have little small monsters. So anything that has to do with little small creatures, it immediately grabs my attention. This time around, the movie takes place within an apartment building. Now, not the entire movie, but the biggest majority of the movie. And I thought this setting really worked for this film. This time around, we don't have hundreds of critters, we just have maybe 5 or 6. And they tried to give each one their own individual personality. And overall, I thought they did a pretty good job with that. And I really enjoy the human characters as well. We have a fan favorite that returns for this one, so Charlie comes back, and he sort of has a small role within this movie. And this is also known as the Leonardo DiCaprio one. Even though he doesn't really play a big part in this movie, I mean, he's in it quite a bit, but he's not really the focus of the film. The main characters within this story is a family of 3, a father, a daughter, and their younger brother. So the daughter desperately seeks the attention of her father, and she's all time looking over her little brother. And rounding out the cast of characters in this movie are just basically other people living in the apartment building, and I enjoyed a lot of these characters as well. So I really have nothing negative to say about this movie, and with saying that, I know that this movie is not perfect. I can't really think of anything to nitpick about it because I just enjoyed watching it. And I know this type of movie is not for everybody, but I really did enjoy it. And I guess at the end of the day, as long as you enjoy something, that's all that really matters, I guess. October 18th, 2019, I watched Boo. Boo is basically a story about a group of friends who go in an abandoned hospital on Halloween night. This group of friends will soon discover that all the rumors are true and that this hospital is extremely haunted. I thought the movie did a really good job at capturing the Halloween vibe. So it definitely felt like Halloween. As the movie is starting, we have our main character of the story. She is carving a jack-o'-lantern. We have Halloween decorations and we have kids out trick-or-treating. So the movie definitely has an awesome Halloween vibe to it. I thought the abandoned hospital was a really awesome setting for this ghost story. We get lots of creepy dark hallways and creepy dark rooms to explore throughout the movie. I thought the movie did a really good job of mixing the CGI effects with the practical effects. Oftentimes the CGI effects looked pretty good, but sometimes they looked pretty bad. And I thought all the practical effects looked really good. All the blood and the gore was really cool within this movie. So overall, I thought they did a pretty good job with mixing the two. I thought this was a pretty fun ghost story. And I wanted to mention that Dee Wallace has a small part within the movie. And even though her part is pretty small, her character is pretty important for the story. So overall, I thought this was a pretty fun ghost movie. October 19th, 2019, I watched Pumpkinhead Ashes to Ashes. And for the most part, I enjoyed this movie. I do have some issues with it though. I thought the storyline and the characters were pretty good for a Pumpkinhead movie, even though some of the southern accents were really over the top and some of them were absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was really cool that we have a couple of characters from the original movie that returned for this movie. We have Lance Hendrickson as Ed Harley, and he pretty much is a ghost in this movie that only Buck Wallace can see. Now, Buck Wallace was the boy in the original movie that took Ed Harley to the witch's house. Also, Doug Bradley of Hellraiser plays a really important character within this movie. Also, just for fun, I wanted to mention that if you look close enough and don't blink, you can even see the puzzle box from Hellraiser. So for the most part, I really did enjoy the storyline and the characters. My biggest problem with this movie is Pumpkinhead himself. They used a mixture of CGI effects and practical effects for the creature in this movie. We first see this when a corpse is transforming into Pumpkinhead. Most of the scene they use practical effects and it looks really cool, but one small part they use CGI effects and it makes it look really bad. There are several scenes within this movie where they went full CGI effects on the creature, and in my opinion it made him look really weird, and oftentimes he looked really small. There is a scene where he is climbing on the side of a house, and another scene where he is climbing on the side of a church, and he just looks really small, so it makes him look pretty weird. But we do get some really good scenes where it's a man in a suit and practical effects, and a lot of these are the kill sequences, which I thought were really good in this movie. So overall, it's a mixed bag with the Pumpkinhead character, unfortunately, because this is one of my all-time favorite movie monsters, and it's really a shame they went cheap on the effects. I did want to mention that the old witch makes a return in this one, and she looks as creepy as ever. So this movie does have a lot of good things going for it. There's some really awesome set pieces as well, and there's some practical effects on some corpses that have been discovered that look really cool as well. So the special effects are a little bit of a mixed bag on the creature, Pumpkinhead himself, but overall, for the most part, I still did enjoy this movie. Okay, so there you have it. Please join me again next time on October 27th for episode number 4 of my 31 Days of Horror in October. Please like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you think about this video. And I would like to thank you all for watching.